Welcome in, everyone. Angelo Carriero and Jimmy Phillips, but just wants to go by Jimmy on this 2025 NFL Draft mini series installment due to scheduling yesterday. We are currently recording at 8:03 p.m. on April 22nd. Jimmy, the NFL Draft is it's less than 48 hours away. I am thrilled, but the one thing that we haven't been able to do is get to these defenders. We are going to jam pack this episode, and to do so, we are going to do a timer episode where we are going to put 20 different defensive players on the clock for 3 minutes. We'll be able to hit most players that you're interested in going into this draft. I'm excited for the depth of this defensive class. I think there's top end talent. I think the middle kind of gets a little shaky, and then you've got real rotation pieces throughout the rest. But Jimmy, before we get to your thoughts, there was one thing I wanted to address, maybe two. I think I'll save the second one for tomorrow. But there was one offensive lineman I didn't get to hit, and I think that it's pertinent to talk about this player because I think it directly kind of rolls in to the defensive line class. That is an offensive guard from North Carolina. His name is Willie Lampkin. He is 5'11, 270 pounds. That is one of the smallest offensive linemen that you will ever hear of. But the reason why he is even getting talked about is because he has been pretty consensusly considered the best run blocking guard, or at least the guard with the best run blocking tape in the 2025 NFL draft. We all know Omarion Hampton and the huge year that he had at North Carolina and his stature at the top of the 2025 NFL draft of the running back class, of course, behind Genty. But Lampkin is a guy that I find to be a tremendous test case for the future of the NFL. And Jimmy, the reason why that is because Willie Lampkin at 5'11, 270, people will say he's too small. And I think almost unanimously we would all agree. That was also said about a generation of three technique defensive tackles that have been extremely successful in the NFL. I think with players like Abdul Carter coming up, Mason Graham coming up that we're going to talk about. You talk about the more of these NASCAR packages and all these smaller defensive linemen that you put on the field because speed and quickness win at the NFL level at the very, very, very top. When will we see a foundational, a fundamental, a culture change at the offensive line position? We've seen it multiple times across the zone blocking scheme adaptation, where you take quick linemen, albeit still big, but lighter guys that are 6'5", but they're 305, 315, instead of your old school 6'7", 330-pound type of lineman. We've seen guards become shifty and quick in these zone blocking schemes. But we all talk about how leverage is the most important thing for offensive linemen. I'd love to see Lampkin gain some strength, and I would make sure that the athletic testing numbers are there. But Jimmy, I'm really fascinated by someone, if they really give him a chance, if we will see an offensive guard of that size, because that's who you're starting to go up against at these three technique positions. Would Willie Lampkin had more success against Aaron Donald? I'm not sure. Aaron Donald's one of the greatest DTs of all time, but we never got the opportunity to see that because of the measurables and the traditional way that offensive linemen are. So Willie Lampkin is a guard that I really wanted to mention. It slipped my mind in the offensive line show, but fundamentally, as we go through this draft as well, there are some bigger players. There are some traditional sized athletes, but more and more at the top, you see these smaller guys that win with athleticism and speed. I'm very fascinated to see if Lampkin gets a real shot and if there will be a challenge to the status quo of what an offensive lineman has to or needs to look like, say, in the next decade or so.
He's going to be one of the more fascinating guys that goes probably on, not probably, he's going to go a day three guy, but just to see what he can do. And when you look into his history and you just watch him, he started at left guard, right guard, center. He's a wrestler in high school. He has great footwork. He knows how to use leverage. It's like the more you look, you're like, Okay, take away the 5'11", 280. This kid is just a baller. Like that's what he's just a grinder. He will do what you need. He's just I think that's incredible value that you're going to get if he goes 6th round, maybe even slip to the 7th round. Someone's going to get them a gem if they know what they're doing with him. That's the thing is you've got to be able to have an offensive line that knows his strengths and don't just throw him out there. But Willie Lampkin, that's a great call.
I'm just really fascinated on what the future of the offensive lineman looks like. And we've all seen him get more athletic. And I still, prefer linemen that are that quick but bigger. But the thing is that if you have an Aaron Donald, why not match him with someone that is the same size, same leverage, same foot speed? I'm not sure if Lampkin has the athletic testing numbers, especially with the quickness and whatnot, but man, he was a road grader at North Carolina. And I'd just be excited to see something different like that in the NFL. But I mean, at worst case, I think you could get yourself a really good fullback and someone that could play in specialty. But it's going to be a really rare test case. And I'm excited to see where Lampkin goes because we have the 2025 NFL draft defensive class in this episode, and some of the best players do err on the smaller side of it. And we will get to the edge rushers that really fit that mold. You do have your traditional players, you do have specialists. I'm really intrigued to see what you think about this class, Jimmy. And of course, we're going to get to all of these guys. But before we do that, what is your bird's eye in the sky view of this defensive class? Is there a certain position group that you're favoring? Do you have questions about certain things, or is there a player that we're going to get to that you absolutely love?
I feel like defensive line is a strong, strong part of this class. Even at like the interior guys, all the talk now, everyone wants to talk about the edge rushers. Everything's an edge rusher. But some of these interior D linemen, there are some dogs in this class this year that the more you look into it, and just the Michigan defense, the 3 guys that they've got that are going to go in the first round, and then you look at their like the breakdown in the tape, they're all the same thing. The 2023 tape was more impressive, and it makes sense. They won the national championship, but those 3 guys that Michigan has are very good.
They are very good. We will get to all three of the guys that are projected to go in the first round. But let's start off with the most interesting, potentially the best player in this class, and the guy that won the 2024 Heisman Trophy in college football, and Travis Hunter. You proclaimed that you would pick him at wide receiver in our wide receiver running back tight end episode. I had him as a cornerback as my favorite position for him, and I genuinely think that he could be a Hall of Fame cornerback. I thought that his athleticism at wide receiver, at corner, wherever, is truly elite. I'm not sure if he's has elite speed like a Matthew Golden, or you got the elite size as like a Darian Porter out of Iowa State that's in this class, or maybe a Reek Woolen of the Seahawks to give a better example. But this guy absolutely has every piece of athletic trait that you would want to match up with any wide receiver in professional football. And I know that some people like to see him get beat by Kyle Williams, or say that he has issues that he needs to clean up in his technique. Cornerback's a position that you have to play a lot and exclusively to be premier at. I'm just saying that I see a guy that has the natural athleticism, the cornerback technique, the absolute desire and wants to become one of the top corners in the league. And the thing about Travis is that he is a very willing tackler. He looks like someone. I remember when Jamal Adams told Roger Goodell at this press conference that if he died on the football field, that would be a happy death for him. And it kind of got waves and stuff. Travis Hunter, as much as he gets this diva label, he puts his body on the line in every single game that he plays, and he is supportive in the run game. He's so athletic. He's so strong. He just, to me, is the total package. I remember when Derek Stingley was coming out, he got beat a little bit too, more often than you'd think. You see a lot of these corners that come out and get beat more often. Even the Sauce Gardners that get early success, when you go up against some of these elite level athletes, that power and strength isn't always enough to get you through, but you can still be a great cornerback in that. So I don't think Travis Hunter's never going to allow a touchdown in his NFL career, but I think if he's put at cornerback, he is going to be the premier premier corner of this generation, in my opinion, hands down. So I'm a huge Travis Hunter fan. Jimmy, what do you think about? I know you like him more as a receiver. What do you feel his ceiling is at cornerback?
I feel like I like his talent at both of them. I just say put him at receiver because you want an explosive playmaker. But at the same time, if you're saying he's elite at both, it's much more difficult to find an elite cornerback than it is an elite receiver. It seems like every year we have a new elite receiver that's in the league. I mean, look, last year we had three guys. But I would say at corner, his ceiling would be best corner in the league, like up there where Patrick Surtain is at right now with some of the young corners, even Derek Stingley. But I think he's right there. And I don't understand the diva thing with him. He's not a diva. The kid plays both sides of the ball. He doesn't come off the field. That's not a diva. A diva would be saying, hey, get me out of here now. Just put me in a package. I'm just going to do this. He does everything. He comes up in the run game. He's forcing fumbles. It's not like he doesn't want any contact, which plenty of guys who play both sides of the ball, you could say, what if he doesn't want to tackle? Well, who cares? Look at the plays he makes. He does everything. I don't like that diva label for him. But just as a player, I love Travis Hunter. Like I think he's going to be incredible.
I would. I think that he will play both sides at the next level. I would play him both sides at the next level. My ceiling for him would be number 2 overall. Like I mean, in some drafts, even if he is just corner, I could take him number 1 overall, depending on the strength of the draft. Like say it was in the Aiden Hutchinson draft, loved Aiden Hutchinson. Probably would have taken Travis Hunter just at his just elite rare athleticism. I think the board starts at 2. If he's just a corner, maybe 3, because the next guy we're going to talk about, I'm buying myself more and more into as we get closer to the draft. But I think top of the board is where you start with him, regardless. So where would you start if he was a cornerback only? Where would you start the board with Travis Hunter in this year's class?
I agree with you. I would still take him at number 2. Like to me, it doesn't discount his value if he were to just be a corner. It's a bonus that he can do both and most likely will do both at some point. Now, whether that's 100% from day one, but I would still put him up there. Just his ball skills. Yeah, he's undersized, but he's proven it. And at every level, it was like, yeah, he was great in high school. Let's see what he can do. Then at the smaller level of college, it's been the same thing with him. And he proves time and time again, he plays much bigger than he is.
Yeah, I think he'll add weight at the next level. I think as he matures
Yeah.
into his body, he's going to not be undersized anymore. He's good in zone, he's good in man. Love him in both. Just a huge fan of Travis Hunter. My I would say that I'm really starting to get to the point where I think Abdul Carter, though, is the best defensive prospect in this class. Again, I think quarterback reigns supreme, so it's really hard to move Cam Ward off of number 1. But Abdul Carter is someone where he's got the quickest first step off the line that I can remember in years. I mean, if you go back to your guy Nick Bosa, he was a bigger guy. I didn't think he was fast off the edge. He didn't have Carter's first step. Joey Bosa was a great complete defensive end. He was not the pass. Joey Bosa is not in the same realm as a pass rusher as Abdul Carter is. I don't know if I can specifically remember the last time an edge rusher had this much speed off the edge at this high of a level that I was excited about. Kayvon Thibodeau, all these guys don't really come up there. Even Aiden Hutchinson was more of a power speed guy. Von Miller's really the last guy that I remember being this highly talked about that had this type of step, that had this type of bend, that is this strong, that is wiry, that can play a little off the ball, but he's best when he's able to bend the corner. He can set the edge. To me, as we get closer and closer, I do think he's a little undersized. I don't think he'll ever get super bulky and be able to keep some of that bend. I think that if you looked at a floor like a Harold Landry from the Tennessee Titans would be a guy that maybe you would say, well, what if he's that guy? I just don't see it. If this guy loves football the way that we think he does, I think he is a no doubt about it franchise pass rusher. And that guy as a floor of number 3 for me in this draft. And I think that there's a potential to even, no matter if these two guys go ahead of him and are successful, that people are going to be like, how did Abdul Carter fall to 3? If that's how the way it plays out. I really struggle to find a weakness in his game in terms, like, I don't think he's perfect. I don't think but when I say weakness, I mean, if you take everything and put it together, I'm not sure what he does that can truly get exposed at the next level. Like even when they run at him, he's strong. I like that he could drop back into coverage, but you're going to use him in front of the offensive tackles, like as a pass rusher. Jimmy, am I missing anything here, or is Abdul Carter really probably the most quote unquote can't miss player in this class?
Yeah, I think he's right up there. It would really just depend on your bias. Like, do you like more of the athlete like Travis Hunter or him? But I feel like it's between the two of them for like the can't miss guy. And what's crazy and almost kind of scary with him is he still doesn't even have that full arsenal of a like like a the different move, the skill set of a pass
Sure.
rush. He uses a lot of just his raw talent, which is crazy that he's already this high of a prospect and he's not fully developed yet, which most of these guys aren't coming out of college, but still it's you put him somewhere else on a defensive line that has a couple other guys that offensive lines need to worry about, and he's going to be even more of a problem, which is crazy to think about that he's not even at his peak yet as far as pass rushing goes.
Would you take Cam Ward number one if you were the Titans? In a short answer.
Yes, because they need a quarterback, but at the same time, it's like you have these guys like Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter that could be the difference. I mean, the Titans, they if they were to add someone like an Abdul Carter, that would make their defense pretty close to, I'm not going to say elite because they have other holes, but he would be a great viable option, but it's just hard to pass on a quarterback. When you're a team like the Titans, you tried Will Levis, that doesn't look like it's working. If I was the Titans, that's a tough question. And it's hard too because at least for me to drown out all the other noise of Cam Ward is the guy. And you kind of like, at least for me, like I get influenced by that. And it's like, well, Cam Ward is the guy. But we also talk about Abdul Carter is one of those generational type defensive linemen. I don't know if he's in that same realm of the Joey Bosa's, that kind of thing. But that's it. That is a very good question. And now that I'm sitting here kind of thinking about it out loud, I would go Abdul Carter over Cam Ward just because I'm not completely sold on Cam Ward being that once in a generation quarterback. He is the best quarterback of this year's class, but I would say just on an equal level, Abdul Carter's a better prospect than Cam Ward is.
Do you have Abdul Carter over Travis Hunter?
No, I have Travis Hunter
So
ahead.
you would take Travis Hunter
So
number
again,
one
if you're the
overall?
Titans, it's yeah. If I'm just taking like the best guy on the in the
Yes.
draft this year, it's Travis Hunter to me. Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter for me.
If it's really kind of a dice roll in a sense of this. In this draft, I would take Cam Ward, number one. If it wasn't for the
Hmm.
Washington State tape, I would take Travis Hunter because I would want someone that I think is the most special, unique talent at number one. I would want to take the most rare player because I'm just saying in this draft class because they don't have a quarterback and it's like let me at least get the super duper star and figure it out
Yeah.
later. But if I was a team that had a quarterback, I would choose Abdul Carter over Travis Hunter. It's kind of like I said, it's kind of a rock paper scissors in some way. I just think that Abdul Carter is that special. And to be quite frank, as much as it pains me to do, I think that I have convinced myself in the last couple of days that I would take Abdul Carter over Travis Hunter. And we'll see that in the mock draft that we have tomorrow, and which will be which will be released the day of the NFL draft. It's the most exciting show that we'll have all year. I'm so excited, but you'll see that tomorrow. I think that once you get to a defensive pass rusher with this first step in their longevity and their impact from game to game, season to season, how big of a change it can be. I think Abdul Carter can be that guy. And for me, it's just the narrowest of margins comes down to the positional value. And it's hard, Jimmy. I'm not saying you're wrong because I had Travis Hunter a week ago when we were doing this, and now I've kind of flip flopped. I think that they're both great. I think these two are unassailably one of, in my opinion, three quote unquote blue chip prospects. I struggle putting Cam Ward in that boat because it is a positional thing. Off the Washington State tape, I would give him blue chip. Off the Miami tape, I'd give him second, third rounder. It is really difficult, but I would say those three guys are in a class, in a league of their own, in my opinion. Going on to the number three defensive player, or at least the guy that's been talked about the most. He is a tier below these guys, but at this point of the process, I actually think he's being under talked about. and that's Mason Graham. People aren't talking about Mason Graham anymore. It's not exciting for some reason. I have only found, I'll say this about Mason Graham. Now, I'm going to give him all, I'm going to say all the good things about him in a moment. Mason Graham, that what keeps him from being a blue chip tier prospect for me is that there are really four areas in which you need to hit coming out of college to really be like some type of perfect prospect. And Jimmy, I may need to retake this because I've got to get it down pat. It's athleticism, it's football skill, it's production, and it's motor. Those four things typically will tell you in some type of combination what round they should go in. If they have none of the four, undrafted, one of the four, day three, two of the four, day two, or three, three first round, four top five, right? Like it's kind of
Yeah.
that's what you need to look for in a guy. Mason Graham has the athletic traits, check. He has the football skills, check. And he has the motor, check. Something with the production is off. And I don't know
Mm.
exactly why, because when I turn on the film, it's almost like that SpongeBob meme where he's reading a book and his eyes are going to two different pages. That's kind of the way I feel because I watch him and I say, this guy is up at the top because he is a rare pass rusher for that size. He is a really good run defender. He is very stout at the point of attack. I would never put him as a nose tackle, but I think he could handle double teams as a three tech. I just have found him to be such a talented defensive player, but I have watched plenty of film where I'm like, okay, but where does it come to fruition? Like, when is this coming true? Like, and I'm not saying he's not impacting the game either, because he is impacting the game. He is special, but it never ends up being the big play. And so that kind of held me back just enough to not put him in that elite tier. But remember what I said about three of the four traits. I think he is super athletic. I think he is, for his size, I think he is strong as an ox. I think he is very talented. He has the motor. In that national championship game against Washington, he really displayed why he was thought of to be one of the top picks in this draft. I can't say exactly that I'm a Mason Graham guy, but if everybody's going to push him out of the top 10, I'll be the one to put my hand up and say that's too far, because it is. This guy is in this class, he's a top five pick, in my opinion. In other classes, maybe six, seven, eight, but I think that if it wasn't for the lack of production, he would be up there with the whispers of these other two players, but he falls just a little bit short for me.
Yeah, I think to me, just looking at the safest guys in the draft, to me, he seems like the safest pick. Like his floor seems high enough that I don't see him, barring injury, I don't see his performance, him flaming out of the league. I also don't know if he has that Aaron Donald, like I don't see him being Aaron Donald, where he's that once in a generation player. But you take him in the top 10, he is going to be just a solid center of your defense, especially if you pair him with a team that's already got a very good defensive line, whether it be the Panthers or the Jets, a team like that. I I just think he is going to be, like you said, he's not talked about enough. I don't know if it's just, I don't know what it is. He was on Michigan. He won the national championship 2 years ago. One of his teammates on the D line is also being talked about towards the top of the draft. But Mason Graham is one that if he falls to near that 10-11 mark, he is going to be a steal.
And I would start the Mason Graham because if you said a pro comparison, Geno Atkins comes to mind as a smaller defensive tackle that was a great pass rusher for many years. You're right that I think Graham's a little bigger. He has shorter arms, but that doesn't bother me as much because he is so strong in his compact frame, and then he's so quick. Like he rushes as a three technique. He has a bend that is similar to Abdul Carter's as an edge rusher. That's how good of a pass rushing three tech I think he can be. I would say that that's like a comparison. And for me, I would start the clock for him at 4. I wouldn't take him over the other three guys. I have him fifth as a prospect in this draft. I have Genty above him. I would consider him above Genty in certain situations, but I think that he's right there at the top. If I'm the Patriots, I would take a long, hard look at him. Jaguars could be in that conversation. I think that's when you start to get to team needs. But once you get down to, I would say, the Jets and, like you said, the Panthers or New Orleans or something like that, yeah, I think that that's where you got to start, even if you need something else, that you go ahead and grab them. Where do you
Agreed.
have
I
them?
don't think he makes it out of. I don't think he makes it out of the
Yep.
top 10. I have him like if I'm the Patriots and it's between Will Campbell and him, I would take as a prospect. I think I'm taking Mason Graham. Now, again, you get into the
Same.
team needs. Do they need a tackle as opposed to interior defense? Do you take the tackle because there's not many later? Whereas the defensive line, we've looked. There's quite a few guys that you can get, in that middle of the draft where the majority of the talent is in this draft. But I like Mason Graham over a Will Campbell at 4.
I do too. And we'll talk about one more guy in the top 10 before I'm going to let you kind of fire off just whoever you want to talk about, Jimmy, and we'll break that person down. But before that, we have to get to Jalen Walker out of Georgia. Jalen Walker's kind of fascinating to me. He is pretty easily, I would say, the second best edge rusher in terms of that first step, dip, and rip type of defensive end. He's able to get under offensive tackles and go after the quarterback. He shows power, good spin move. I even went back to 2023 to watch Michael Williams, who we'll also get to watch Michael Williams when he was quote unquote healthy. And even then against Kentucky, I saw Jalen Walker like really flash the talent that he has showed. So he's not a 1 year wonder. Like this guy has been doing it for a while. He's just been on a stacked Georgia team. I find him to be more interesting as maybe an off ball linebacker. I think he struggled in coverage at times, though, to be honest. Like, I wanted to see a little more from him in that area of the game. But where this draft lacks kind of a real depth at the top at linebacker, like you get one or two off the board and it kind of falls off a cliff in terms of day 1 and 2 draftable middle linebackers. I thought that Jalen Walker, they talk about him being so much of a culture setter that I'm really intrigued to see if he can kind of play both at a middle linebacker, a little outside, but then pass rush as well. I have a little bit of size concern with him as an edge rusher, though. There was enough on tape to where it made me go, oh, this isn't the next Dwight Freeney. This guy may need to play linebacker and specialize as a pass rusher on in packages rather than him just being an outside threat the whole time. I don't love that for him. And that's also why he's not in the top 5. He's more in the bottom half of the top 10 in this aspect. So that's kind of what I think and how I feel about Jalen Walker. Special. I don't know if he has a special first step, but it is a great first step. He's very quick off the line. He's strong into offensive tackles. I think that he could play linebacker and make a big impact. He's definitely a spy. We saw that against Jalen Milrow and his ability to do that. And then especially the Texas game, he was able to do some of that. But I'm not as high on Jalen Walker as others are, but I do have him as a bottom of the top 10 prospect. And I would start the board for him. Some people would say 4. I don't think so. 5, you can get me to, but I think it starts at 6 with Las Vegas and then doesn't fall much further than that. What say you, Jimmy?
Yeah, I kind of like him going to Carolina. But
A
he
lot
is
of
one of
talk
those.
around
He
that.
needs. Yeah, he's the freak athlete, like you said. And to me, he gets a little bit of a bump. Like we just talked about, this is just me personally. Like a Ohio State receiver, if he's a very good prospect, I give him a little bit of a bump. Georgia defenders, I don't know what they're doing down there, but they are just an NFL machine at Georgia with guys on their defense, especially on the defensive line, as we've seen the last couple of years. They all just go to Philadelphia. So we cannot let Jalen Walker
And
somehow
Green Bay,
end up
and
at
Green Bay.
Philadelphia and Green Bay. But yeah, I love Jalen Walker. I really like him to Carolina. He does need a little bit more development, but the freak athlete that you have, all the tools are there for Jalen Walker to be successful.
Yeah, where would you start the board with him? Where did you say Phil? You said Carolina's where you'd start is at 8 or a little
I would
higher, a
put him
little
in that
lower? Yeah.
range.
Mm-hmm.
I would put him right around that 6 to 8 range. But just the way he would fit with Carolina, I like that with him going there. But I would
Sure.
put him in that later half of the top 10.
Sure. And so that's the top four. Do you think there is a defender that's clearly in this mix as a top 10 pick, or do you think this is where the board drops a little bit for the defenders of this draft?
I think those are the top guys, like everyone that we just went through. That is the first tier. And then I think it does drop off a little bit, and you start to get into some guys that have some question marks, like a Shamar Stewart. He is one like the workout warrior. The combine really helped. But then you look at his numbers, and then you watch some of the tape, and it's like, okay, I get the athleticism and everything, but he had 1.5 sacks last year. And you just see other things where he's not a technician when it comes to pass rushing. He doesn't have like that pass rush Rolodex of different moves that he can do that you see of the superstars in the NFL. But he is one that he's very raw, and someone's going to take a chance on him. And he is going to be, to me, he's that big boomer bust guy on the D line where you don't have that production necessarily, but you say, okay, we think he can be that great talent, but we haven't really seen it yet on the field consistently.
Yeah, I think that it's pretty interesting that we have one defensive back, one linebacker, one D end, one DT as the top prospects in this draft. It's not like three defensive ends and nothing else. Or I like how
Yeah.
balanced it is in the kind of pick your flavor at the top. And we can move to Shamar Stewart and because I think there's one guy that we'll talk about in a little bit that could be that fifth guy, in my opinion, that lurks around that range. But we'll stick with Stewart. I am out on Shamar Stewart. I'm out.
Yeah.
I watched enough of him. I like him as a effort guy, as a potential run defender, as someone that you take those traits and you get production out of him. I would not take him in the first round, even with all of these gifts. People like to compare him to Trayvon Walker coming out. The thing about Trayvon Walker is that he was still a first round talent, but in my opinion, he was a second half of the first round, more in the 20s, as a really athletic run stop defensive end and someone that I thought was a better pass rusher inside. I actually think that Trayvon Walker has developed at the NFL level to he's not better than Aiden Hutchinson, but he's actually exceeding what I thought he would do. Like 10 sacks last year. He was on the really outside edge, but he was in the far window looking in of a Pro Bowl. I thought that Trayvon Walker really showed up, but the thing was, at least on tape, I can make an argument that you pushed a first rounder all the way up to number one. Uh, Shamar Stewart's just someone that I watched. I thought that he rarely won any matchup that he had. Really, Will Campbell was the most success that he had, and even then, it wasn't perfect. It's just the football skill. I love his motor and I love his athleticism. And what did I say? If you have two traits, you're a day two guy. He does not have the football production, and he does not have, to me, enough football skills to take a gamble with him on the first round. If you want to take him in the second round, that's your choice. I would prefer the third round. I think he's a rotational effort defensive end with a lot of physical capability, but that's where I'm at. I would be scared as could be to take Shamar Stewart in the first round.
Agreed. I have a large handful of edge rushers, just D linemen or just defenders in general, that I would take ahead of him. He's a project that you would get. And typically you don't reach for a project in the first round. Some teams would, but I would not. He would be a guy that you get and try to develop in. You're not taking him with your first pick.
I think it's funny that the boomer bust prospects, in my opinion, are all SEC. Well, three of them are SEC West. I would say all four of them are SEC players, in my opinion. I think the boomer bust guys in this draft. Do you want to go ahead and get to that section since we're already on it?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
I think that the boomer bust guys in this draft are Shamar Stewart. We talked about Will Campbell and why I think he's such a boomer bust guy. Not that I think he could bust out of the league completely like these other guys. I'm just saying if you leave him at tackle, he could, but then become a great guard. I think that Shamar Stewart could bust because I don't think he has the football skill. I think that Nick Emenwari is kind of similar. Great athlete.
Yeah.
I think he could maybe get it someday enough. Almost kind of like Omarion Hampton. I think Omari Hampton is more developed as a football player. But I can see a world where Nick Emenwari, if he's in the exact right scheme and learns it, can be productive. Where Shamar Stewart, I'm just worried overall. And then the biggest boomer bust guy, just based on are you going to be who you're going to be, is Walter Nolan. Like Walter Nolan, I think, is the classic boomer bust guy. Do you want to go Eamon Warrior or Nolan first?
We'll go Eamon Worry first.
Eamon
He is
Warrior.
a he
Yep.
is a he is an interesting one with he has all the measurables. He's athletically off the charts. 6'3", sub 4'4", 43-inch vertical. If you could create a player to be everything you wanted measurables wise, it's Nick Eamon. But to me, he just doesn't he can make plays, but he's not consistent enough. And I just wonder, did he get the push because of his athleticism? And you're saying, okay, if he's an athletic guy like this, he's played in the SEC, he made plays, had a pick six, played really well against LSU this year. But I just don't think he has the complete package. Like you said, he's more of an in the box safety than a roam the middle of the field safety or just a strict cover safety. So, like you said, he needs to go to a scheme where he can be used more around the box to use a skill set and not put him out there on an island to get exposed.
Yeah, give him the comparison that you gave me.
Taylor Mays, that was drafted years ago to my 49ers. When I saw Eamon War, it's the first thing that popped out to me is like that. He reminds me a bigger, can hit safety, has some ball skills, but if if he's covering a speedy wide receiver, he's in the slot, he can get exposed that way. But to me, his floor would be Taylor Mays, and that's a comparison that I have. And it's like is he going to be Taylor Mays, or is he going to be what we all thought Taylor Mays could be? And that's why he was, taken earlier than originally expected.
I loved Taylor Mays in college. I mean, when you're talking about marketing, he was viewed as like a Spartan warrior. Like he was
Yeah,
the most athletic player in college football that season. And Eamon Worry's athletically testing is probably the most athletic safety we've had since Taylor Mays. And Taylor Mays was a real guy at USC, but even Pete Carroll passed on him, dropped to the second round, ended up
yeah,
not working out. This Eamon Worry thing, it's surprise. I understand the value of athleticism, especially in this NFL, especially at defensive back. I've watched him. I don't think he's lost necessarily, but I think he is very raw football, like thinking the game. It seems like he knows where to go in his first assignment. Like he's got that far. But then after that, then it's kind of like, okay, where am I going? What do I do? I'll just, play pursuit, anything like that. I think that his football skill is also like there's some, but again, he's half baked as a football player in a lot of ways. For you to take a first round pick and then to put him in the pros and say, go be a Pro Bowler, you're going to have to really
yeah.
develop this guy, and you're going to have to go somewhere with a lot of patience and somewhere where you have elite coaching. I don't think Nick Eamon is a lost cause. But I do think that you really need to throttle your expectations for the first couple of years, and you really better learn the guy to see if he can develop. For me, if you're going to have to develop him, it takes that long. Board starts really late in the first round. You've got to be a team that just has no needs, and you can bring him along, and he's your X factor. But he screams to me, just like Taylor Mays was, a second round pick, and you hope for the best.
Yeah, I would start him very end of the first round or early in the second round. I feel like would be a safer spot for him. I don't. He's listed a lot of places the number one safety, but I just don't see it. Again, the potential's there, but with some of the other prospects that are out there, I would not want to take him in the first round.
Well, one guy that I think will go in the first round, and a guy that could potentially be one of the whoa picks of the first round, is Walter Nolan. I've watched enough of Walter Nolan to get it. Nobody that big moves that easily. That's not to say he's the quickest. That's not to say he's the fastest, but he's so nimble at his size. Like he really is kind of the 1980s, 70s, 60s dream prospect at defensive tackle. He walks. It's like the NBA looking for centers that can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. When you got a guy that moves that effortlessly, you just get enamored. And I do think that Walter Nolan has that. After that, I think he has some football IQ. Like I do, it seems like he knows what he should be doing. He looks like a baby deer sometimes, though, in terms of getting to where he needs to be. And the thing that I don't want to hear ever again is a Jalen Carter comparison, because I heard that he's going to drop just like Jalen Carter did, and everybody's going to regret it just like Jalen Carter coming out of Georgia was a Hall of Fame defensive tackle prospect. He is one of the, to me, the only guy. There are three guys that I could put in the breadth. I put since I've been doing this. Number three is Quinnen Williams of Alabama. Number two was Jalen Carter. And number one's Ndamukong Suh. And on the right day, you can switch me Carter and Suh. That's how good Jalen Carter. There has not been a pass rushing defensive tackle outside of Aaron Donald that has come out with Jalen Carter's ability. So I want to get that out of the way. Walter Nolan is not that. Walter Nolan can maybe become a Chris Jones someday, puts on some weight, keeps the athleticism and all that, but you're really going to have to bet that what happened at Mississippi and the Texas A&M stuff is all because he's young, and that once he develops an age that he'll be dominant. I don't see enough of that to feel confident that that's the case. I think Walter Nolan is a very scary boomer bust prospect, depending on where you take him. Again, I would pick him starting in the late 20s to early 30s. That's I would feel comfortable there. I'd take the shot on Walter Nolan. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not taking a big shot on Nolan.
Mm. What do you think about, because I've seen some landing spots for him, like Cincinnati at 17. Would that be too much for your liking? Because I feel like that's where I would kind of start him, would be later half of the first round, but Cincinnati at 17 could potentially.
I I don't think that's an unfair spot in terms of where in the draft. I would not want him in Cincinnati. I'd want him in Pittsburgh. I'd want him in Baltimore.
Mm,
I'd want him somewhere where the accountability is so through the roof that he has no choice. Maybe even a New England with Mike Vrabel comes in and lays the law down. Like that, I need a
yeah.
strict coach for Walter. I need someone that if Walter Nolan pops off, that Mike Tomlin can look at him and say, "Well, we'll see you later then. Go out, leave." Because I'm afraid that some
Yeah.
places will try to coddle him and it'll enable the bad habits. I need somewhere that's
And
going to treat him
imagine.
like an adult man from day one. And Walter has to look in the mirror and be like, do I want this? Do I want to be great?
Yeah.
And if he says yes, then yes, I would take him at 17. Yes, I would be excited because the potential is there. But he's not a Jalen Carter prospect. And if he goes to the wrong place, let's say New Orleans shocks the world, they're a dumpster fire. That's the last place I would want Walter Nolan in. You know, I wouldn't want him going to Miami. Nope. Nope. Too much instability. Give me somewhere with a structure, and I'm good with Walter Nolan.
Yeah, especially if you go somewhere like Pittsburgh. Yeah, you have Mike Tomlin. You've also got Cam Hayward,
Mm-hmm.
who is a coach you don't want to get on his bad side. And you've got TJ Watt,
Mm-hmm.
assuming that he's staying there, even though he did chunk the deuces up on his Instagram a couple weeks ago. But that could be a
Minka
great spot. Like you
Fitzpatrick.
said, going, yeah, the
Yeah.
fit that he had. And that's the thing with a lot of these guys. It's like, could they deserve to go here? But you have to find the right spot. And teams know this. Like a team like a Pittsburgh, they could look at him and say, okay, we have these other pieces that are going to be in the same meeting room as him every single day. He's going to learn how to be a professional. And that's a huge part. So many of these great prospects, they never really learn how to be a professional because there's no one else in the building to hold them accountable. We've seen some stuff with the Colts last year with Anthony Richardson. There's been a lot of stuff going on, but there's certain locker rooms where you're like, there's an iffy guy
Yeah.
personality
Let
wise.
me
He is just
let me rephrase something then, because I think you're right, actually, Jimmy. I would actually, where I said late 20s, early 30s, I think that was even a little low. Now, if you gave me the infrastructure, I'd push him further up the board. Even his pure talent, athleticism at the position, you're right. I think that late teens is where you start top half of the first round. No thank you in terms
yeah.
of too much instability. But the more we talk about it, if Pittsburgh was picking 11th and they picked Walter
Mm-hmm.
Nolan, I'd feel pretty good. Maybe a little too high to be in
Yeah.
his head or something, but no, I'd feel pretty good with that as being like a ceiling, because I don't want to undertake that he's so athletic for a defensive tackle. In terms of, there's no like raw gas athleticism. It's just he's so flexible and nimble for his size and position. It is really rare. So I think you're right, Jimmy. If I had to rank these boomer bust guys, I think pretty easily it's Nolan, Eamon Wari, Stewart for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm also the lowest on Shamar Stewart. I don't know. There's a lot of hype around him, but just for me, when I watch him, I'm like, I don't see, I get the potential, but it's just not there to me. I don't know.
Stewart's the most elite athlete. I think that Nolan's the most gifted, and I think Eamon
Yeah.
Worry is just below Stewart as that elite athlete. But there is one guy when we were talking about it that I think could be that fifth guy in this class, and that's in terms of defensive players that I have seen some mock in the top 10 to New Orleans, interestingly enough. And I'm not sure where the smoke is, but Jahad Campbell is the player that I think that you could see really rise up in terms of I think so many of these defensive players are specialists. I think you see a James
Yeah.
Pierce. I think you see an Ezraku. I think you see a Kenneth Grant, like some of these specialist type of guys that are coming through. But Jahad Campbell's much more on the Jalen Walker side of things. And I could even argue that Jahad Campbell can do a little more. I think still Jalen Walker is just a touch above, maybe, but Jihad Campbell is absolutely built. He is very fast. He's very strong too. He has a little bit of trouble shedding blockers, but once he hits a running back, the running back goes down. It's almost like a cement wall falling on you faster than
Hmm.
gravity. Like he is very, very strong. He has experience pass rushing. He has experience setting the edge. He can drop back into coverage and he can go sideline to sideline. I think that the linebacker position may be getting devalued, but as much of a chess piece as people want Emin Worry to be, I think we look at Jihad Campbell as a more realized product of that. Jihad Campbell is obviously coming off a torn labrum. I think that there are some cases to be made that, like Walker, the coverage could be a little better. He's not going to be Luke Kuechly out there, and the pass rushing isn't as good as Walker's. But with his size, strength, athleticism, speed, I think that he is a guy that when you look at it, he ticks a lot of the boxes and leaves very few unmarked, or at least few weaknesses to put on his report that Campbell's someone, and especially at the position, Jimmy, if you're a team like a Dolphins, or some team that needs like a little bit of a culture shock, get a guy like him in and let him be the leader. And I think that that can add you more value than just the player skill set himself.
Yeah. In my notes, as you said he's close to Jalen Walker. I said he's similar to Jalen Walker, but better, is how I feel about Jihad Campbell.
Wow.
He actually coming out of high school was an edge rusher, so he has that experience. But at Alabama, when they were stacked when he came in, he's had to move around a little bit, so he has that versatility a little bit. If he is going to be that kind of off-ball linebacker, not an edge rusher, he could use some work in the coverage game. But that's what a lot of these guys. When you're 6'3", 244, and yeah, you're athletic, but it's tough to be out there in space with as fast and as great as these guys are now. So that's why you look at some of these and it's like, okay, what scheme is he going to go to? What fit? Where does he land? And that kind of thing. But I think he is similar to Jalen Walker, but I just have him as that a little bit tick above Jalen Walker as far as just being fully developed and ready.
Well, I think so too. I think Jalen Walker, just with that first step in his like quickness and kind of bendiness, he has a higher ceiling. But I think that there's a real world where if you play this draft 10 times, that 7 out of the 10, Jahad Campbell is overall the better player because I think he's a higher floor. He has a decent ceiling and the size, makes a little bit of a difference there. But that's fascinating that you had him above. I haven't heard that often, but I can see it. It's not unreasonable to say
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So I think that Campbell is a guy that to me is top half of the first round. Top bottom of the top 10 maybe, but I think that Campbell. I would want to watch more too to really buy in, but at least I buy into the package. And I think a linebacker with his athleticism and skill set is a pretty safe pick overall.
Yeah.
Who's next? Who do you want to go to? I'm letting you because now I believe that since we talked about the boomer bust guys who you could foresee at the top because of the high end potential, and you got the top five, I think, defensive players pretty easily in this class with Hunter, Carter, Graham, Walker, and Campbell. That's 8 guys we've talked about so far, and we've talked about almost exclusively first round, upper half of the second. This is a really interesting defensive class with strength, but questions and some specialties and concerns. Like, I think outside of Hunter and Carter, every single prospect we've said has something that we're concerned about. So
Yeah.
that's interesting on that. Who do you want to go to next?
I want to talk about the two guys from Ohio State, Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau. Had to work on that
I
name
know.
quite a
I
bit. I
was going to
usually
say,
just
I'm
call him
glad you said it
JT
first.
or or JTT, but Tuimoloau. I don't understand why they're not talked about it enough. It could just be that I have this weird soft spot for both of them. I love Tuimoloau since I think it was the Penn State game 2 years ago where he had plays all over the field. I think he had a pick six in the game, had another interception or a pass to flat that was like a big play late in the game. But him and then Jack Sawyer, he just shows up in big moments. He may not have whatever on tape, but Jack Sawyer is a guy. If I'm picking mid 20s or somewhere late in the first round and he's there, I want to take Jack Sawyer, just a culture setter, a tone setter. He has a nose for the ball. What are your thoughts on the two of them? I'm very high on both of them. I have a first round grade on both of them. Tui Malone is a little lower. I have Jack Sawyer higher than him. But just Malone, he had 13 sacks last year. Jack Sawyer had 9 sacks. And we're over here talking about Shamar Stewart with a sack and a half, where there's sometimes where the production on the field should warrant, some levity and where you're drafted. And they won. It's not like he was doing this at a low level. He wasn't at a lower level school. They both been at Ohio State. They both been playmakers for a couple of years now. So what are your thoughts?
Well, first, my thoughts are that, Jimmy, earlier we had to pause the podcast because there was a spider crawling on the wall, and I thought I got it. But while you were talking about the Ohio State defensive ends, wouldn't you know it, coming crawling back up a wall was the exact same guy coming for
By
redemption.
God, it's the Undertaker
It's
spider.
that's gotta be Kane. I just yeah, I'm so sorry to be distracted while you're talking, but that's one where I would give myself a pass for that one, but a little behind the scenes look and what's going on in out here in the middle of nowhere. But I think Sawyer is interesting because he was a top prospect. He is a guy that has the body and a guy that has good enough athleticism to definitely be an NFL player. He reminds me a little bit of Ohio State defensive end Sam Hubbard, where they were both highly recruited, both played at Ohio State, both kind of like from the area. I think Hubbard was from Cincinnati, but I think Sawyer might be from Columbus.
Yeah,
I'm not 1,000% sure
I
on that
believe
one.
he is. Yeah, he's a Columbus kid through and through.
I think Sawyer is better than Hubbard. I don't know about first round for Sawyer, but I do think that he's a rotational defensive end that you can take in the later part of round two to definitely round three. But I would want to watch more of Sawyer and get like if you have his RAS up, I don't know if he tested to give me what type of athlete he scored as. I'll talk about JT Tuamilio first. He is a player that I was surprised wasn't getting enough buzz. He was considered consensusly as a top 50 prospect, but it's like he had a ceiling of 40 somehow. Like it's like, no, he's not up there, but he's good. Like he's not up there, but he's good. I remember hearing about him for years and watching him on tape. I
Yeah,
could see why. Some people say he's not going to be a great pass rusher, but he's kind of was a pass rush specialist at Ohio State. He's really strong. He's very thorough. I've heard at least from some of the things that I've listened to is that he might be a surprise first rounder on
mm,
Thursday, and I'm almost there because this class, there's so
yeah,
many guys with question marks and so many guys that I just wouldn't want to take. And I think that if you look at these guys and you say, who's better, Kelvin Banks or JT? It's JT. Like he's a better football player. But at the NFL, because you've got your Miles Garrett's and you've got your Watts and you've got your
yeah.
Parsons and you got these guys, you've got to find guys that could develop into a guy that can stop them because that's so important. Another reason why I would maybe take Carter. Well, I probably at this point would take Carter above Hunter. It's because how important those guys are. So I think that Sawyer is someone that could be a very solid, very playable defensive. Maybe he can have a career like Zach Allen, a guy that kind of bounced around and became a Pro Bowler as a run stuffing defensive end. But I think that JT should go in the top 50 where he's been mocked all this time, but we may see him at the end of the first round, apparently.
Yeah, and I looked up Jack Sawyer. Does not have any, doesn't have the RAS score. I guess
Mm.
he didn't do any of the testing or anything. But yeah, I like both of them. And I was just curious your thoughts because I feel like you said, just a pure football players. They are two of the top, just pure football players. Go get the ball, go make a play that I feel like that you're going to get in this draft. And they proved it at the college level for multiple years. This wasn't a flash in the pan. They came out of nowhere for 1 year, had 6 great games to end their senior season. Like both of these guys have been putting up numbers, and Jack Sawyer too, just the passion and the love he has for the game. I mean, you saw what happened when Michigan tried to plant that flag. You want to tell me you don't want that guy in your locker room?
And
Come on.
and he had the game-winning play against, was it Notre Dame or
Yeah.
was it the game
Texas.
before
Texas.
Texas? That's it, Texas. Yep, yeah, the
Yeah.
game-winning play. So I like that.
Yeah.
I think they're both being undervalued. I'm with you.
Yeah. What about your thoughts on a James Pierce
Mm.
for an edge rusher out of Tennessee? He's another one of those raw prospect guys.
Let's go James Pierce and Mykel Williams back to back because I think that you
Okay.
almost get two different sides of a coin with these guys. I watched. I'll say this: I didn't watch enough of James Pierce to have a complete scouting report, but I watched enough of James Pierce to be like, okay, what am I missing? Because I did see the splashes. I know against Kentucky, he went up against I won't name drop him because he went to my high school and stuff, but he went up against this freshman offensive tackle last year, not this past season, but the season before, and like really abused him. And it was because he was more of a veteran. He's very long. He can really bend around the corner enough. I don't think his bend is as special as people make it out to be. I really don't. I think he's very long. I didn't see the raw athleticism either. Like I didn't think he was especially like very fast. I thought that he had a good first step, but even when he bent the corner, it's like he could bend it, but like Abdul Carter is the guy that you give that type of reputation to, and just the more that I watched him, the more I just thought to myself, like, I know this guy was talked about as being a top 5 prospect in this class before the season. I've watched enough games to hear all the announcers talk about how James Pierce is supposed to be that guy. He's also a guy that played less than half the snaps for Tennessee's defense. Why? I
Hmm.
don't get that one. So I am not saying that James Pierce, like I haven't scouted him enough to say, hey, I'm out on James Pierce completely. But from the little I've watched, like if Green Bay picked him, I'd be like, that's I don't know. I really don't.
And that's a name that's a team that I've seen quite a bit.
Don't say that, Jimmy.
I know.
What are your thoughts?
So I kind of feel the same way. The one thing that I had in my notes was the bend, in that he doesn't really have it. For being a speed guy
Yeah.
and being a thinner guy, I mean 6'5", 245, but when you look at him, he looks kind of thick. Could be that he's wearing
He
number
does look
27.
thin.
And
He looks almost like a
it,
basketball player or something. He's
yeah, he does. And I don't know if the 27 number makes it look different, but he does not look, he looks very thin. But you would think with a guy that size, he would have better bend coming off the edge, but he doesn't really have that, like you said. So he is one of those iffy guys to where if I'm middle of the first round, I don't know if I would have him slotted there. I think he would be more of that later half of the first round, maybe even I don't know if you would call it a steal, but if he could slide to the second round, I think the value is much better there.
I just think there because he's rangy for sure. I think he has a
Hmm.
little bit better bend, but I'm with you. Like his body's a little odd. Like he does look like a basketball player, and I think some of the want out of him is that long body and that first step and that he can bend like quote unquote enough. But I'm with you. I saw the same things. I'm scared of James Pierce. I've seen some people say that like if it wasn't for off-field stuff that he would be easily the second best rusher, and it's like nah, I do not like I like that.
Yeah.
Even the tape is showing me that because here's the thing, Jimmy, there are some players that you watch the tape and you can get different things and you have to watch more. My number one example of that was Micah Parsons. I watched three different Micah Parsons games and I got three different results from him. I saw his
Yeah.
Cotton Bowl against it was a team that was green and they were like a smaller school, but he dominated. Like it was the best game I saw him play. But I saw him against Michigan and he was terrible. I mean, he was flat out terrible. And then I saw another game in Parsons, and he was just really average. And I was like, okay, what is Micah Parsons? Like, he's got the capabilities. Then there are the players that I think are the most common, which is just they show you who they are every game, and eventually you can stop watching film because I've seen enough, like it's consistent enough. And with Pierce, I watched just enough to know that after every time I was saying I don't see what everybody else does. Not saying it's not there, I just don't see it. Whereas Michael Williams, he is probably the number one prospect for me that is falling up the board. He is a player that I think is going to go a lot higher than people think. I think that he's getting just a little overhyped. Like, I think positional value is becoming too important for him. Like, he's a guy that I'm sure people were screaming at us that is truly the fifth defensive player in this class. I think he's sixth behind Campbell. I do think that. Michael is so interesting because I think that he has the potential to be an NFL run defender from day one, even with his with how raw he is, even with his bum ankle last year at Georgia. I thought he did really well against the run, and he's someone that even with his body type, which is a little leaner, he's still 6'5", 260 pounds, and used to be small back in our day, Jimmy, for a defensive end. But that's a guy that I saw enough on tape that he can hold up in the run game. I saw enough in 2023 to say the bend that people think Pierce has, I think that maybe Michael might have. It's still not Carter's level. That's why I ended up pushing Carter so high. As people try to say these guys have bend, it's like, no, Carter has bend. Bend is a real thing that you can see, and guys have it or they don't. I think that Williams is a little, I'll say this. Again, I wanted to scout more of 2023 Williams, and I didn't get to. I think he's being just a tad overhyped in terms of his pass rush ceiling. But I think there's a pass rush floor that is very good. And I think there's a run defender. I'm I'm sorry. I think I meant to say that he has a pass rush ceiling that is very good. Like he could be a very good pass rusher, and I think he is a floor
Mm-hmm.
as a really good run defender. So you're getting a really young player, a really strong player, a really developmental player, and a guy that I think can produce early. I can see why teams like Michael Williams so much. I'm a little lower on the ceiling than most, which is why I had him lower. But as I do more and more of the class, the more he falls up the board to me. Pierce, I didn't get to give my range. I wouldn't pick him till the second round. I'm scared of what I've seen. I didn't see enough of the athleticism. Where Williams, on the other hand, I saw enough to make me feel secure that in this class I would have him at right. I think it could start at the top, like 11 for me. I don't think a top 10 pick, I'd feel great about picking Michael Williams. But starting at 11 and going into that 11, 15, 16, 17 range, I think Michael Williams is like a fine first round pick.
Yeah, and he's one that, like you said, with him already having the run stuffing capability, but lacking the pass rush. Typically, you don't see that with many of the high level edge rushers. Usually, if you're an edge guy, you go get the quarterback. That's what your specialty is. But I wonder with him, just kind of thinking out loud, the thought process of a defensive coach or defensive line coach. If you put him somewhere that already has a couple pass rushing specialists, maybe that could teach him a thing or two. Like if they were to go to the Niners at 11, which is right there at that range that you said, they've got a Nick Bosa who has, you could say one of the best pass rushers in the league.
Sure.
So you already have that run stopping technique that's ingrained in him. He's great at that already. And then he could develop the other things, or you just use him in tandem with the other guys. Where I think he has, I would still put, like you said, I would not take James Pierce in the first round, but with him, I think he has more of that foundation that's already ready to where he could come in and be an impact guy, but you don't need him to be your pass rush specialist right away.
I love what you just said there. I think that again, ceiling pass rusher. I think it's a little more limited than people think, but he's really long. He can bend. He's not a great bender, but he is a good bender. And I think that if he can keep some weight and get a little quicker, that I see why people would love to have Michael Williams. So I'm about 75 to 80% of the way in on him. I would not like it if a team picked him in the top 10. Like Carolina at 8 would still feel a little rich for me because I don't know if you're going to get the all the juice out of that squeeze. But I'm perfectly fine with him being a first round pick in a mid to 11 12 type of first round pick.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on another name in the class? Donovan Ezeruco from Boston College. Another one of these pass rushers.
You plucked him out of my mind because I was watching him the other night, and I still, again, we're starting to get to the range where I wish I could have done more. I just simply didn't have time. I'm just giving you my raw thoughts, and I won't stamp anyone
Mm-hmm.
that I don't have a great opinion on. That's why about James Pierce I said that. That's why I said that about some of the earlier guys that I wish I would got to watch a little bit more. Ezraku's one that I wish I could have watched a little bit more, but I will say that I I like his build in a vacuum. He's really stout and strong. Like he's about 6'1", 2, I want to say 226, but he looks a little bigger, like a little stronger. He's got long arms, which of course he has to have. I couldn't imagine a short arm pass rusher being like that. I know that there have been examples of guys like Terrell Suggs and Dwight Freeney, but you also have guys like Kwity Paye, and there's some other defensive ends that have been smaller. I'm just to the point where I don't usually like to ding players anymore. Like when I was younger, you had to be a certain height weight. Like you had to be a certain build athlete, or else I didn't think you could make it. And then the older I get, the more, I guess, a little more romantic I get about overcoming deficits at your size. Or you're like, I'll tell you what, Jimmy, I wouldn't take Ezraku until the second round. I do not like the build. I like the build in terms of I think it can be successful. Stout, strong, fast, long arms. Those are all great things. But for me to pick a first rounder on an undersized defensive end that's not necessarily one of the elite football players this class, like Jalen, that's the same thing I said about Jalen Walker. I said Jalen Walker worries me at his size and height. It's just he had such a special first, step and power combination. I don't think Ezraku exactly has that. I'd be fine with taking a shot on him in the second round, but if I'm picking him in the first round to be my 1A pass rusher or my number 2 pass rusher, I'm not confident right now that I can say that.
Yeah, and his wingspan. So he's 6'2". His wingspan is 6'8". He has an 82 and 3/8 wingspan. So again, you want to talk about long arms and being able to use that and knowing how to use it. He is one of those that has a pass rush, kind of repertoire in his system where some of these other guys say they need to develop. He already seems like he's that technician when it comes to rushing the passer. Like he could go out there day one and be a, third down pat, you need your NASCAR package. He can be that guy for you. But I agree that he would be one that you could get. Again, that's what we've been talking about with these teams that if you're needing to pick between, okay, do we take that linebacker or a DB or safety in the first round? You have guys like Ezraku in the second round that you're getting a pretty good value there. Again, you're reaching on him if you're taking him in the first, but getting a guy like that with that talent and that pass rush skill set already, if you can get him in the second round, that is going to be a great value pick.
Yeah, I think that I don't see I don't see him falling further than one of the top 5 to 6 selections of the second round. Like I just don't. I think he's a really good football player. I just worry about the size and I worry about taking that in the first round. But I think he's a good enough football player that with his athletic traits as well, it's just first round. I just wouldn't want to pick him in the first round and then get a guy late second if I'm a Kansas City or something. I feel like I'm getting 2 second rounders. Like I'd rather try my best to
Yeah.
get, but he's a solid football player, like he's one. I think yeah, like you're the Chiefs. If you pick Ezraku and you pick like Jalen Royals or something, you're just like, eh. But if you picked Emeka Ibuka and then traded up to get Azaraku, then you're like, like that.
All
It's just,
right. Now we're cooking.
it's really the way that you put on the outfit. So that's where I am. I don't want to make it seem like I'm low on Azaraku. I'm scared of the body type be at this level. So but that's a great. He is an interesting prospect in this draft and one that I think is a good football player. Oh, let's
Yeah.
get this. Let's get this
And
guy. Let's hit this guy. In the same class, I think he's actually rated a little bit higher as Mike Green of Marshall. Now,
two I was going to.
oh, look at us. We have in sync, 2 for 2 being in sync on this. Mike Green. I did get to watch again. I wish I could have seen more, but he's weirdly a guy that I watched, I think 2 or 3 tapes on, and I was like, I'm seeing the exact same thing on each one. Remember earlier, I said that Micah Parsons showed me completely different things, or some players are pretty consistent throughout their tape. That was Mike Green to me. I do not see the pass rusher others do out of Mike Green. I know he had a great year sacking the quarterback at Marshall, but the tape I see is that he's kind of a stiff bender. Like it's not all the way there. He's not super quick off the snap. I think he's strong, but I saw him get washed out a little. I think that he reminds me of a guy that coincidentally, like I actually really liked coming out of Auburn 2 years ago, a guy named Derek Hall of Auburn. He was a guy that he's in Seattle right now. uh, I really liked him as a prospect, but he wasn't a first round. I was like, maybe he's a late first round prospect. But and I'd like my team to have him, and it didn't work out. Green reminds me of him in terms of like he's a big enough guy. I think Hall was a little like thicker, where Green does have kind of a pass rusher's body. I just didn't think the skill set was exactly there. It's weird. It also reminds me of Jermaine Johnson of Florida State. I remember all the rumors of him maybe going fourth overall, and I was like, guys, you're lost if you think Jermaine Johnson. I'll say not that he couldn't have gone fourth, and he didn't. He went 26th, and I felt so vindicated. In fact, I had him the lowest. I did this mock draft pool, and it was like 180 mock drafts. I think I had him lowest of all of the mock drafts at Dallas at 24, and he went 26. And I was like, oh man, like I would have won the prices
Pretty
right on
good.
that one. But the reason why is because Jermaine Johnson was he was really fast and very wiry strong, but he couldn't bend to save his life. Like the guy was not born to be a pass rusher. And people thought he could be an elite one. I was like, no, he's a linebacker. He is a linebacker that's very straight line, fast, strong, cover ground, cover horizontally. And that's ended up more what he is in New York. I think Mike Green's kind of an in between of those two guys. I think he can bend enough to put out there as a pass rusher. I think he's strong enough to make a tackle uncomfortable. I would be surprised if he became one of the best pass rushers in the league. And I think that that's why he's not thought of that highly. But if Mike Green is a 15 sack a year type of guy, I'll say I missed. But I think that you're looking at a guy that's like 7, 8, 9 sacks a year, and that's kind of where I have him. I'm not ironclad on that one, but all the tapes look the same to me, and all 3 ones did not scream great pass rusher to me. But good football player. Good football player.
Yeah. I thought this was interesting. He has the same pass rush win rate as Abdul Carter last year, 22%. He has really good closing speed that you like off. And I feel like those are the closing speed thing, because he played at Marshall, the competition isn't quite as high. So you're like, okay, what kind of tackles is he going up against? But the closing speed, when he gets the edge and he closes on the quarterback, that doesn't change regardless of your level. Now, you could have a quarterback that could escape a little bit better, whatever, but just you're watching it on film, just him in a vacuum when he beats a tackle off the edge. How quick is he closing that gap? And it is very quick. Now, he's a similar build to James Pierce Jr. They're both at 6'3, 6'4, 245-ish, but I feel like Green is a little bit more polished than James Pierce is for right now. But I don't think he's going to be in that top half of the first round. I would put him late first round, but he could be another one that slides into the second round or is taken right there at the end of day one, early day two.
Yeah, I've seen Arizona, Cincinnati. I've seen him in that like mid to late first round area. Green Bay, like I've seen that a couple of times. Tampa Bay. I think he's a good football player. I really do. I thought it was interesting against Virginia Tech that for a guy that I thought had really good, like a pretty good physicality about him and determination. As soon as the ball got away from him, he just it's almost like it's like a video game where if you go by something, it interacts with you, and the second you're out of its range, it just goes back to being an NPC. Like that's a little what Mike Green did, and I was like, I thought your whole thing was like ruthless aggression, like utter, like relentlessness, and I know it's there. But I watched Ohio State, I watched Virginia Tech. I definitely saw a player that can play in the NFL. I just if you're
Mhm.
wanting a pass rusher, I think Mike Green's more of a complete football player. Like, can he play outside linebacker in a 3-4, but be a linebacker and a defensive end and sometimes an edge rusher, like that type of guy. I think he's of a jack of all trades, master of none type. And when I see Green,
Yeah, and he's a redshirt sophomore, so he's young to be a redshirt
oh yeah,
sophomore
that is
coming
young.
out
Yeah,
of Marshall. So you could it kind of just depends if you kind of already like him, you could use that as a positive and say, yeah,
sure.
see, he can still develop. If you don't like him, you can say, well, he's what are we going to do with him? What experience does he have? How many games has he played? How many different looks has he seen? So, but I just something interesting that you don't see too many redshirt sophomores coming out of a smaller school like that, where you could think,
Mm-mm.
okay, with NIL and everything, he could go to one of the top
Oh
level
yeah.
schools
Oh
and
yeah.
stay in for another year. But, coming out as redshirt sophomore.
Yeah, I wonder if him and Tuamalia are in that same class of like where they were really good college rushers, and then at the NFL level they kind of throttled down a little bit, but still have that skill set. So, but
Yeah.
Tuamalia was, he was thought of like Mike Green was, if not a little higher. I remember 2 years ago seeing him in top five of
Yeah.
mocks. So yeah, I definitely don't want to like put Mike Green down at all. I mean, I know that he had that case off the field, but it seems like denying it pretty heavy and all of that. I mean, we'll see what any reports come out of that, but we'll see if that affects his draft stock as well. And
Yeah.
James Pierce was in that similar boat. It's interesting. I think Pierce may have a higher ceiling in terms of what his ceiling could be, but Green does feel like a safer, more reliable pick.
Yeah. I have one more guy that I want to touch on. There's a couple of the interior D linemen, but this guy caught my eye. Ty Robinson, 6'5", 290 pounds, ran a 4.83 40. And I'm not going to say that he is JJ Watt, but wearing a Wisconsin uniform, he looked a lot like JJ Watt out there on the field. Again, he's not as talented as JJ Watt. He's not going to be JJ Watt, but he is just a big dude. He's disruptive. He gets up, he gets his hands up in the passing lane. I think he had 6 pass deflections last year where he gets his hands up. He's around the ball. He's a smart, heady player. But he's not even projected to go till day 3. So he's an interesting name to keep an
He,
eye on. That maybe he goes earlier.
No, I thought that I think that I think you I think the green. See, look at me making mistakes. The red and white you got mixed. Ty Robinson played at Nebraska, and that's why I put him on the list. Is because my
Nebraska.
grandfather's a
That's what
big.
it is.
It's
Yeah.
Big Ten red and whites. There's only two that look, so it's easy to get them switched. But that's how I got my eye on him first. I was almost shocked to see his combine stats because he was their nose tackle and he was an absolute load in the middle. I mean, brute strength nose tackle. And then you look up his RAS card. He was one of, if not the highest ranking athlete at the defensive tackle position. To me, when I say sometimes, Jimmy, that things set off red flags, that set off green flags for me, just tons of them. I'm like, oh, so he's a lunch pail football player when I saw him on the field take on double teams and was the strongest lineman that he went up. Like, he was the strongest one on his defensive line. He was stronger than all the other guards and centers that he went up against as a nose tackle. Now you're going to tell me he is an elite tester as an athlete? Sign me up. Like, I am all aboard the Ty
Yeah.
Robinson train in terms of I just don't see how you can get that level of tape. And you said JJ Watt. He reminds me of a guy out of LSU about a decade and a half ago named Kyle Williams, who was, I think he was kind of the
Oh
second
yeah.
guy to Glenn Dorsey. But Kyle Williams ended up going to Buffalo and became this freakishly athletic nose tackle that had a decorated career. A little surprised he never caught on the, is he a Hall of Famer? Kind of trail because he had that level of career, especially at it seemed like he got better with age, actually. So Ty Robinson's a guy that I think that is going to go or should go a lot higher than you'd think. And I'd love to have him on my football team, man. Like I'd pick him as high as the second round. Like top half of the second round may be a little rich, but if he's that good on tape and he's that athletic, tell me why not?
Yeah, and that's why, like, when you look at his tape and you look at the numbers, the measurables, what am I missing, or what am I not missing that everyone else is missing? Like, I don't see how he's a day three pick. Everything about him, like, look, the Kyle Williams comp is great. Kyle Williams is like that guy where he's always consistently at the top, like how London Fletcher, the linebacker for the
Yes.
Redskins for all those
Yes.
years, just all he did every single year was just lead the league in tackles. But nobody talked about him. He didn't really make Pro Bowls, but he's always consistently available. He's going to do what you need him to do. You trust him to do his job and make everyone around him better. And I feel like a guy like him, like if you could steal him in the third round, I mean that's I don't see the negative.
Yeah, he's someone I think is going to get picks. Like if there were draft props, he's going the under. Like he's going the under. Matthew Golden's going the
Yeah.
under. There's certain guys that are just I would hammer an under. Let's see the last of the defensive tackles before I think we can maybe move on to the secondary as the last piece. Is that kind of what you were waiting for to crescendo with the secondary? Was Kenneth Grant, the defensive
Yeah.
tackle from Michigan, talking about almost the opposite. He's kind of almost a mix of Ty Robinson, Walter Nolan, like in terms of he's a nose tackle as well. That's very he's not as athletic as Robinson and but he's like nimble in the way that Nolan is nimble for his size. Like not many Kenneth Grants come around. Like Derek Brown was a defensive tackle like that coming out of Auburn, and even then, like Grant's bigger. Now Brown was more of a soldier look. You know, like he held his weight a little better, but there's Bill Parcells' planet theory, and Kenneth Grant fits the planet theory. I think he's pretty much a guarantee to go in round one.
Yeah. And just he's another one of those Michigan guys that you see, and you're just like, they are just full of monsters up there at Michigan. But yeah, he's just a disruptor in the middle of your defense. I do feel like he's going to be one that goes in the middle part of the first round to where, he's obviously not going to be as high as Mason Graham is going to go, but still he is a tier below Mason Graham, but he is just a ball of just wrecking machine that's going to be in the middle of your defense.
And then lastly for the defensive tackles is Dion Walker out of the University of Kentucky. I know, apologies to Derek Harmon, like a guy like that. Just didn't get to watch enough of him. There's other guys that, through this, there's a UCLA linebacker that Casey Schwinn with, that I apologize. Just didn't get to him enough to really have a strong opinion. But Dion Walker is someone that played at the University of Kentucky that I am more conflicted on now than I was because I remember Ole Miss and Kentucky played earlier this year, and I remember it being a personal game for like both of these guys. Like they both, like Dion Walker wanted to prove he was better than Walter Nolan, and Walter Nolan wanted to prove that he was the best player on the field. I went back and I should have watched the second half to feel good again. But I remember Dion Walker just running laps around Walter Nolan in terms of that game. And I watched the first half and I was like, this is embarrassing that I thought that this was that great of tape. But again, I remember him having a great game against Ole Miss, and I wish I would have stuck with it, but I was in a rush. I was trying to watch these other defenders as well because I watched Dion Walker enough at Kentucky to know this guy does have first round talent. Like I think that he should be a first rounder, and people are going to think I'm crazy or a homer or whatever. I just do. I saw him wreck games at the SEC level, and he was undisputedly the number one defensive player on his the number one player on his defense for at least one, if not 2 years running. I remember being like, if Dion's good, the defense is good. And if he's not, the defense is not. And it's just, he needs to be in better shape. He needs to not be coddled. He needs to be pushed, but he's gonna have to, like, he has, when I said Chris Jones earlier, for like, no, like, he has some Chris Jones-ish stuff too. Like, he's so big, so tall. He's a different player. Chris Jones is such a great pass rusher. But Deion Walker can be like, if the Chiefs took him, I'd be like, okay, like, we are cooking. Like, I would love to see Deion Walker as a Chief. But I also saw enough of the bad parts where, God, he's just a little too heavy. God, he's just a little too lazy. Gosh, he's just a little too motor runs hot and cold. He picks when he wants to be great. If he picks to be great on every play, like, big defensive linemen need rest. I get it. But I'm still in on Deion Walker. I would still take him in the late first and think that I can get it out of him. The difference between him and the other boomer bust guys is that I've seen the product. I've seen how good he can be. So I believe that he can be that good.
Yeah, and last year it came out after the season. We didn't really hear much of it at all, really, during the season. He was dealing with a back issue the entire year last year, and he didn't talk about it. And to me, I would see that if I'm an NFL team and a scout, and I talked to him and all the medicals are fine, whatever it was, it could have just been a nagging issue, but it's fixed now. I would see that as a positive. That because going into last year, like my hot take going into last year, he was a top 5 pick. If he plays this
Yeah.
season out, he was going to be a top 5 pick for this year's draft. And it just, I think the injury had a lot to do with it. But I say all that to say he could have not continued to play. He could have come out of games. He could have very easily. Kentucky was bad this year. So it's like, what am I out here playing for? I'm hurting my draft stock by me. He didn't care. He wanted to be out there for his guys. He's massive. He's like 6'7". I mean, he is a guy that, like you said, he's absolutely a first round talent, but the injury last year, I think, held him back a little bit. But I would feel very comfortable taking him late first, early second. Again, maybe the bias because I've watched every game that he played and you hear the stuff that he says. He seems like a great guy off the field. So I think he would be
Yeah.
a great second round value, but I don't think
Yeah.
he's going to go that high. I think he's a day 3 guy
I
where
need
he
I,
ends up going.
I would need Dion to grow up a little bit. Like, they're all kids, so I don't really blame them, to be quite honest. But I think that sometimes, like, that the program can be a little too giving to some of the guys. And I mean, they got the best out of him. I mean, Stoops is a great, like, developer of defensive players, but I would look at that and say, you're 6'7", 340 plus pounds. And that's probably a little generous on how much he weighs. And it's like, I'd be scared. And if it's not a recurring thing, I would make sure I'd tell him before I even draft him, like, you're fat. Like, you need to lose weight. Like, you do. But I would do it in a way that to encourage him because, hey, if you're strong and you're well conditioned, you can be one of the 6 to 7 to, I'll just say, top 5 defensive tackle in the league. Exactly what you said in terms
Absolutely.
of taking him in the top 5. He is that talented. He is that good, but you've got to do it all the time, and you've got to be at full health and available all the time. So I'm a Deion Walker guy. I know it may seem harsh what I said, but that's out of love. That's out of me being like, hey, you can do this. Like, you just gotta do it. So I would feel comfortable with a late first round pick. I'd love if Kansas City got a hold of him. That's where I want Deion Walker to end up, even if it's in the second round or the third round. Deion Walker needs to be a Kansas City Chief. I'd be so excited to see it. So, Jimmy, we're in the final stretch. We're into defensive backs. You take me where you want to go. We had Travis Hunter as the top DB in the class. I'll let you pick who you want to talk about first.
Let's go Will Johnson. Just kind of stay at the top 4 corners. A big physical corner from Michigan. 2 years ago, his tape was much better. This past year, he dealt with an injury, but he seems like, if you were to take Travis Hunter and put him just a receiver, Will Johnson is the number 1 corner in the class. I think he's behind Travis Hunter. So if we are considering him a corner, which I feel like a lot of places are, they're putting him as both. But I love Will Johnson. He's got a nose for the football. He makes big plays. He's big enough and physical enough to deal with the huge receivers that are in the league now. I didn't really see a massive hole in his game. He seems like he's got a very high football IQ, and he's got ball skills, and he's had multiple pick sixes there at Michigan. He's got a nose for the big play.
I watched Will Johnson cut up of a lot of his plays. I love how he dips and flips his hips. I love how he can read a quarterback. There have been an emphasis on, like, his zone play. I'll say that I'm more worried. And the way that Terrion Arnold struggled this year for the Lions is kind of the way that I would worry a little bit about Will Johnson. His 40 time was reported to be about like a 4.58, and I'm sure it's a little bit better than that. But if he's hovering around the 4.5, I think he's well built for his size, but I do find him to be a little bit on the smaller side. If he doesn't have the speed to keep up for it, it would make him more of a zone. Like if you're not big enough, fast enough, like that, or like I guess not big, but tall enough, fast enough. Like I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
trust you as a man corner. And but even though I love your hips, love your feet, I think he's a long time pro, and I think he'll find him in good spots. I just don't know if those good spots will. I, I don't like here's the thing. I think last year you could have seen a Darrell Revis with the way that he moves and everything, but the problem was is that Darrell Revis was very very athletic. Like he was a 4.3 guy, punt returner. You know, he was just all these things. And if Johnson's not that type of athlete, you're getting a real reduced way. So I like Will Johnson. I just if I'm drafting him as an NFL organization, I don't think he's a number one. And if you're playing him in zone, do you need to pick a zone corner that high? I would be a little weary, but he's very smart. He's good hands. He's very quick, and he's very good at flipping his hips. So I do like that about him. I'm not saying I'm out on Will Johnson. I don't like him in that top tier 1 or 2 range for a corner.
Yeah, and I think going with that, I wouldn't take him inside the top 10 if I'm in the draft this year. I just don't
Mm-hmm.
see him as that elite level of a corner. But with him having the 6'2" size, he has shorter arms. But again, I feel like
Maybe that's what
you would be
makes it
able to
seem like
see
he's
that.
smaller to me then is the arm length because he didn't
Yeah,
look like AZ Thomas of Florida State. Like he doesn't look like that even but you're saying he's 6'2", then that's real height. That's not nothing.
yeah. But he's 6'2", but again, he has the shorter arms. His arms are 30 and an eighth. So, which is
Woo!
wingspan's easier to tell the difference in, but his it's in the 21st percentile. So that's very, very short arms.
Yeah.
And again, you look at those things and it's like in today's day and age with these bigger, taller receivers, 6'2" used to be a huge corner. Now it's like, okay, you kind of almost have to start at 6'2" because you got these 6'5" receivers everywhere. Um, but so I could see that, and then his 40 not having that top end speed. But if he can play the ball and he's smart, that's the thing with these guys. If you're a little slower in your 40 time, if you have the football IQ, you can make up for it to where you can kind of mask it a little bit. Now, if you're one on one with Tyreek Hill, see you later. But for the majority of the time, if you're a heady defensive player, you can make up for that, step or, half a step short that you are with your IQ.
And that's why, as a football player, I will say this: I should have put more emphasis on this. There were parts of his tape like I don't like it when a player gets behind him. Like I wouldn't want him as a nickel cornerback, but I do like him when the ball's in front of him. Like I think that he's a willing enough tackler. I don't think he was out there all the way like 100%. Like I actually think Travis Hunter was a much more willing tackler. But I like Will Johnson enough. Like I do like his tape. I just would want to see him keep it in front of him. But a guy whose tape that I couldn't get a great feel for, but his athleticism and his just even the look. Sometimes you look at a cornerback and you're like, yeah, you could play cornerback. I don't know what to do with Jahdae Barron. I like his numbers. I think that he looks the part athletically. Like it seems like he kind of runs like a receiver for the most part. Like he's comfortable with sprinting and tracking. He takes pride in the cornerback position. I like that. I can't. I think he was a willing tackler. That is a little lost on me now that I look back on it. But I don't know if I saw enough of the wow stuff to make me because some people are talking about him like could he go 11, 13, like could he go that high? I think with corners sometimes you just got to take them and hope for they're almost like the offensive tackle position. Like with corner, you just got to take them and hope for the best. So I think that Jade had enough of both worlds, like the athleticism and the tape, to where I'm like if Green Bay got him at 22 or 23 or whatever, I'd be like, okay, like we need a corner. Like he seems like that he could be good enough, like athletic enough to hold up. But I don't know. I don't see a great corner. But cornerback can be
Yeah,
a little harder to watch in broadcast view. Corner's a hard position. I stay away sometimes from corners and safeties when I do my scouting because, like I said, I mean, when I do my scouting with limited time, like the last couple of years, you just have a 9 to 5. You've got basketball broadcasting. Like I have so much stuff going on that I want to get the best look at guys. And unless you have an all 22 and you're able to break down every one, and the plays that I see, Jimmy, are the ones where it's like all targets and catches versus this player. It's like, well, how well was he covering when he wasn't targeted, right? Like what
right.
about like how good was his coverage otherwise? I don't get to see it. It's just the folly of the process, Jimmy. So what do you think about Jade Barron? Like if he goes 11, are you woohoo? Are you scared or is it like fine? Like where do you sit on Barron?
I think 11 would be a little bit of a reach, but I wouldn't hate it at 11. I have him kind of right there in the middle of the first round. I feel like where he fits, at least on film, when you see him make the big plays, he's great at jumping routes in the middle of the field, like at that nickel corner, slot corner. He seems physical enough to be there. And it seems like all of his plays, he's beating the receiver to where the ball is. And that just tells me, he's got the football IQ. He's got the quick first step. He's got a very good 10-yard split in his 40. I really like him. And it is one, going back to you talking about watching corners on film, it's hard, especially in the TV broadcast, but too, with the way the coverages are now, you don't know what type of scheme they're in. You don't know what type of cover three they're in. You don't know the shading. And it's so hard to tell where it's like, oh, well, he got beat there. And it's like, well, you don't know. Like, how do we know the safety wasn't supposed to be over the top? And then it makes him
Mm-hmm.
look worse. So it is more complicated, I feel like, to watch film on corners. But you just see him when it's a ball's up in the air. He has the skills, the ball skills to go up and get it. But I really like the way he looked playing in the slot. I feel like that could be a spot. And now you don't look at, and nickel's no longer like, well, it's just your third corner. Like, no, you were drafting specialists to be in the slot playing nickel now.
Yeah, I would be scared to take a nickel that high. Maybe I'm a little behind the times, but because you need someone to cover Ladd, you need someone to cover Jamar when he's in the slaughter CD. Like I get it, like trust me, but I guess I'm still a little behind the times. Like if Jade's just a slot corner, I'm good in the top half of the first round, but I would pick him somewhere between like in the teens, early 20s if he's an outside
Yeah.
corner because I think you can get just enough out of that athleticism to make the point. And that's the thing about scouting corners too is they get beat. Like they really do. They get beat.
Yeah.
And you just got to accept it. Like that's why if you see somebody trying to clown Travis Hunter because he got beat, it's like the only guy that didn't really get beat in college was Ahmad Gardner, a Sauce Gardner, affectionately to some. But he was a really grabby, physical corner at the line of scrimmage that for the first couple of years he got away with. But I know he had a really down year last year, and I think that's because like you can get away with size and strength for only so long until like you get those pass interference calls, till you get those holding calls. He wasn't quick in his hips. It's really hard to scout those guys because I had Stingley over him in that draft because I was like, yeah, Stingley gets beat more than Gardner, but I think Stingley can play zone. He can play man. He's good against small receivers. He's good against fast receivers. He plays well short area. He plays well middle. He plays well deep. Like, yes, he's not perfect in anything, but I can put him on anybody and he can do 85 to 90% of the job. And for me, that's better than a guy that could do 100% of the job in a couple places and then falls off the cliff in the other one. So that's just how I am with corners. It's hard to evaluate them. Like it really is. So it's even a guy that I thought was a great cornerback prospect and Jeff Okuda didn't work out. It was probably injury
Yeah.
more than anything, but Okuda was a very safe cornerback prospect. Was surprised he got out. And then before we get to our honorable mentions, Maxwell Harrison, the cornerback out of Kentucky, I love the kid. Like I've seen him before. I've being around him. He's good for the locker room. Great teammate guy. Smile on his face. Very, very, very fast. He is a real football player. Like he wants to be there. I like all those traits about him. He is very small. He is very small. In person, he is tiny. And that does not work against the number one receivers. Like he is going to have to be a specialty corner, whether that be the slot, like you were saying, Jimmy, or if it's a just matchup specific type of guy. he was primarily a zone corner at Kentucky. In fact, he was pretty much strictly zone. And for a guy that fast, he got beat downfield more than I liked. There's a Vanderbilt game from last year where he got beat a couple. I think he might have had two pick sixes in that game, and everybody was like, "Oh, this is one of
Yeah.
the performances of the year." Trust me, go back and watch the first half of that, and you'll see what I'm talking about. That Vandy receiver bullied him. And I was really afraid of this guy that everybody's like, he's an All American, first team All American. I'm like, it's not just the pick sixes. There is more to the game than the big plays. I love the pick sixes. Don't get me wrong. I'm a huge turnover guy,
Yeah.
but I don't trust Max. I don't trust Maxwell to be a number one corner. So if he gets pushed up the board because of his speed, he's very small. He's very slight. I don't think he's a first rounder. I think if you take him in the second, you better have a plan for him because I actually liked his teammate more last year in Andrew Phillips. Now he wasn't as fast as Maxwell, but he was bigger. He was more physical. Like Maxwell is willing to tackle, but Andrew Phillips will hit you and he'll hurt you. He's longer. He's got a little bit more range to him. So in just comparison of guys, I'm just I like Maxwell as a person. I think if your team picks him, that's great. I think first round's a little high for me, but you hope he's a Trent McDuffie, but I just don't think he is. I'm really worried about Maxwell if he goes too high or doesn't go in the right spot. Unfortunately, because I like the guy.
Yeah. And the size compiled with the shoulder injury he had last year, it makes you wonder, like, okay, if he does try to come up and be too physical, is he big enough? Can he withstand it? And that's a legit question. And there's not much he can do because he doesn't have the frame to put on enough weight. He's not just going to put on 25 pounds.
He
And you
won't.
go, oh, look at this new Maxwell here. He is what he is. And when you get to this point, but he has great instincts. Obviously, as you said, he's got a nose for the ball. He had the two pick sixes against Vandy. That was when he really started to shoot up people and go, okay, who is this guy from
Right.
Kentucky? And that was early last year when he had that. But it's one of those, his speed definitely is what's going to take him. I think he's going to end up going in the first round, but I think I'm more on your side where I think he is a day two guy. But because, like you said, I don't think he is a true number one corner. Now he has the speed and he has the football instincts, but does he has everything else around it? Is his size going to be an issue?
Yeah, he's going to try hard. He will, but he
Mm-hmm.
played almost strictly zone. I don't remember a corner that small playing strictly zone. And it's just a situation where if he's going to have to start playing man, it's going to take him a while to get it because he didn't play
Yeah.
it a lot. Maybe he'll be better in man. Maybe the only reason why he got beat was because of the zone stuff and he had weird responsibilities. So I would love to be pleasantly surprised. I don't think he'll bust because of, like you said, the desire, the speed, and all that. But I do just worry about someone that small getting beat over top. He's not going to handle Jamar. He's not going to be able to handle a CD Lamb. He's not going to be able to handle a Malik Neighbors or a Marvin Harrison Jr. It's just so who am I putting him on if he's a first round pick? So that's where I'm at. Jimmy, give me your thoughts on Malachi Starks because I didn't get to watch him. So just give me the Spark Notes or the Chat GPT of Malachi Starks, and then we'll do our honorable mentions of just some names here to close it out.
Malachi, his film from 2020, just overall, he was just better in 2023 than he was this past year. He's versatile. He can tackle. He's got very fluid hips. He's very fluid as a safety, even though I would say 6'1", 205. I mean, that's a decent size for any kind of DB now. He's not 6'3", 230, not a big safety, but he has enough size. He can be good in the run game as far as coming downhill. But he is, from what I've been seeing, he can get played with his eyes. If you've got a smart quarterback back there that can look him off, he can get kind of lost out there. But just as far as a fluid safety that has some size, that's willing to play in the run and has ball skills, I think Malachi Starks, and again, he's from that factory at Georgia.
Yes, but the one thing that worries me, not really. I hate to do the comparisons where you can't pick a guy because the other prospects from the school failed. But I really liked Lewis Seen from Georgia a couple of years ago. The Minnesota Vikings took him. I thought he was a hard hitter. I thought he was a really smart football player. I thought that he had the size, athleticism, the just I really liked him. I thought he was just a guy, like a dude, like a dog. And he had an injury early on, like coming into the draft, and his career just never got off the ground. Like, I don't even know if he's still in the NFL, to be honest. And so when I hear people are worried about Malachi Starks, I mean, you're talking about certain positions, Jimmy. Safety is one that's starting to get a little dire. Like, we grew up in a pretty good era of safeties, but I feel like more and more
Yeah.
it's going to even the era that we had before we got Kyle Hamilton, when Minka Fitzpatrick first came in. Like, Justin Simmons was the top safety in the NFL, and I mean, no disrespect to him, but the names used to be bigger that were top safeties.
Yeah.
And I just, and again, no offense to him, he was a great football player, and it's just, but even in the NFL draft, like Kyle Hamilton was an elite safety prospect. He dropped to 14, Jimmy. Like, he didn't go top 10. He was my number. I almost want to say three. Actually, give me just a second because I actually had like a top group in those guys. But this is just how safeties have gotten. I don't know. Jamal Adams busted. Well, not busted, but his injuries kept him from ever being like
Yeah.
that guy. So that's just kind of where. Um, I'm sorry. I really want to find my big board from that. Yes, I had Kyle Hamilton 6. Interesting. Okay, I thought I had him a little higher. I had Aiden Hutchinson, Charles Cross, Kayvon Thibodeau, Ika Makwanu, Tyler Linderbaum, Kyle Hamilton, Derek Stingley. That was like my firm top 7, like right there. And that was, yeah, that was interesting that they got Linderbaum and Hamilton in that draft. I thought they won that hands down. But I don't know. Safety, I'm worried about. I hope the position gets a real influx. Hopefully, Caleb Downs comes in and joins, Hamilton and maybe one other young safety in the game. So let's see. Let's give our apologies. Derek Harmon, I already mentioned, apologies. We couldn't get to you. Nick Scorton, apologies. TJ Sanders, apologies. Trey Amos, apologies. Xavier Watts, apologies. Brandon Garrison, apologies. UCLA linebacker Casey, can't say your last name yet. I'm sorry. Apologies. Um, let's see. Was there who else do we owe apologies to? And there's the kid Revel. He's a cornerback that's been popular. Darian Porter. Is there anybody else that we need to give apologies for?
The main was that I saw was Trey Amos. He seems like one that's a really good
I
press
like him.
corner
I like
coming
him.
in.
Hmm.
Yeah, he can be real physical at the line of scrimmage. So he was the one that kind of stood out in that honorable
Jimmy, I would
mention
take
ish
him over
phase.
Harrison. I would consider taking him over Johnson because I think he has more like man to man skills. Jade is maybe
Yeah.
where I like Trey more because he's physical, but I like Jade's like outline, like his athletic package more. So that's kind of where I am. What I saw from Trey Amos, I really liked. So that's Az Thomas, Florida State, another guy that dropped because of the 40 thing, but he had good tape. Um, who else are we missing? Are we missing anybody else? Is there anybody you want to shout out? Or are you good with that? Because I mean, we talked at least about 20 defensive players, and we just did 10 more in honorable mentions. Like we are forced to split up the show, and that's just the way it goes sometimes. And we wanted to split up the show, but we were forced to jam it together. Honestly, Jimmy's the MVP, man. He had the timer to help me stay on track. He had the list of players to make sure we stayed on track. Like Jimmy, I might have been the wide receiver catching the touchdowns, but Jimmy was throwing the slants that got me there. So I, couldn't have done it without you on this episode. Like, integral part. So thank you.
We just run the no huddle offense the whole time. We just keep it rolling. Keep it rolling. Come on. I was Patrick Mahomes like this the whole time. Like, come on. Come on. Next play. Come on. Come
That's
on.
great. That's great. So I'll give you the floor. Any final thoughts about the defensive class or anybody that you want to name specifically that we haven't before we get out of here?
No, the more you dive into this class, and it's similar to the offense too, and a lot of the draft experts have been talking about it, the scouts, the middle of this draft is very complicated, but in a good way. It's like, is there that much difference between the 20th guy and the 50th guy? Like, they're all almost interchangeable. And I feel like most drafts aren't like that. Most drafts, you can say, no, this guy is clearly a late second round pick. This guy's clearly a day 3 pick. I feel like there's so many of them. And it's not that it's a bad thing. I think they're all solid. And we might have mentioned it one of the other days doing the show, where there's a lot of starters, but not stars in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when you go through and look at all these names, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I almost find it to be a situation where you have like a lot of you. I think that it's almost weird to where like I can talk myself into Hunter, Carter, Graham being stars, and especially the first two. I can talk myself into Walker being well above like Pro Bowl level and Jihad Campbell being Pro Bowl level. Then I wonder if I can talk myself into a starter because then I'm like, okay, are the
Yeah.
rest of these guys rotational? Like they're all NFL players. Or are they just rotationals? Any of them just like a lockdown starter? And maybe that's just me being an old man, but that's where I was like, oh, so it's such an interesting class. But Jimmy, tomorrow we are going to drop in the morning. Look for it. Thursday, April 24th, 9 a.m. We have got our 2025 NFL mock draft. And Jimmy, I'm gonna choose for us, but I'm gonna let you get your opinion in right now. I want to do a mock draft of just what we would what we thinks makes the most sense, or if you have a
Yeah.
guy like I'm not going to pick a guy ranked 60th second overall. Like even if I love the guy, it's not
Yeah.
going to happen. But I don't like to guess, oh, the Patriots are going to pick Will Campbell. Like how do I know who the Patriots are going to because Schefter reported something? I don't know. So I want to
Yeah.
keep it to where it's realistic, where we can highlight some guys if we need to, but mostly just do you find a position pairing interesting that's also the right draft range? Do you find something that makes sense? Like, do you think that this is the smart pick? So do however you want to do your side of the draft, Jimmy. We'll try to keep it realistic, but the NFL draft every year, it's what gets busted quicker, a Final Four like a March Madness bracket or your NFL mock draft, because I think I know exactly what I'm talking about. And then pick five, it gets ruined from there on out.
Yeah, or like Michael Penix last year. That didn't make any sense. If anyone had that on a mock draft going in, you would get laughed out of the room.
Most
And then look
shocking
what
pick
happens.
of my lifetime. I think that
Michael
was the most
Penix goes
shocked
number
I've ever been at a
8.
pick. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like you really can't like who's to say like, oh, that's a dumb call to say he's going to go there, or like you having Will Howard as your second best quarterback. That might sound crazy, I guess, on the surface, but is it really? You want to, he's
Jimmy, I
been pretty
changed my
good.
mind. Jimmy, I backed off.
Oh,
I got scared off. He's no
oh
longer my number
no.
two. I'm sorry, Jimmy. I know
Well,
you wanted me to
is
stay
he
strong.
is he still in your top 5?
Yeah, he's fifth though. Like, yeah,
Okay.
I remember how I
All
said
right. Well,
those guys are
that's higher.
shuffleable. Yeah, like, oh,
Yeah.
that's higher than
See, but
most. Yeah.
I feel the exact same way about the quarterbacks, where it's like the more I look at it, it's like, do I really have Will Howard that much lower than like a Shador?
Mm-hmm.
Like he's lower, but is it really? What about Tyler Shuck? Like
Mm-hmm.
then you see the clip of him at the combine. That's the worst throw that anyone's ever seen. And it's weird that it took like a month for that throw to go viral, but now that's like all the talk is like, oh, Tyler Shuck sucks. You see that one throw we had at the combine?
I'm with you. I just ultimately I got to the place where I psyched myself out. Like I was like, Will Howard does a lot of nice things, but is there anything that pops off where I'm like, oh, this is real? And I just couldn't get myself there. I was like, no, this is like an average backup talent set. It would have to be something mental that pushes him over, and I can't scout that. Like I don't know what that
Yeah.
is. So I have Will Howard fifth now. I think it just moved everybody up. I think it's a Shador, Milrow, Dart, and I might be going more towards you with Dart over Milrow. The closer we get to, but I just couldn't do it. So, but I didn't want to say I was going to save that for tomorrow. But we're talking about draft. You got to tune in tomorrow. It's the most fun show of the year. It's on draft day. Nothing will get you more ready than Jimmy and I breaking it down. So for Jimmy, thank you so much, MVP of this show. I really do appreciate it. And for Angelo Carriero, we will be back tomorrow with the final NFL Draft mini series pre-draft installment with the NFL 2025 NFL mock draft. And then we're going to do some reviews after the draft. So stay tuned to everything. We're excited to have you, and we will see you tomorrow morning.